right, day 5 of the Individuation Challenge process, 31 days of October Individuation. This is exciting, this is cool. So the question to ask for day 5 is, how much do I rely on external influence for my overall sense of self, right? Now, because we live in a society, because we live in a culture where we are very influenced, because depending on different things growing up in our lives that occur, specifically like I was talking about in a video that I meant to post yesterday, but I ended up posting today because I forgot to post it yesterday. I was talking about how we are shaped so much in the earlier years of our lives by, specifically looking at social survival. I actually don't know if that term has been coined yet, but it's what I like to call it. It's basically the time of life when we don't know what the fuck's going on, and we're looking for love, safety, and belonging, and we're looking for validation to make sure that we understand where we're going and what's going on, right? So it's likely that we're going to take on a lot of ideas about ourselves from other people. And so that's why this question of how much of my overall sense of self is determined by external influence, right? How much do I derive my sense of self, my overall sense of self, from external influence? And the reason why this is so important, looking at my own self, my own life, I grew up in an environment where I became conditioned to tune my energy into everyone else to gain a sense of safety. With tuning energy into everyone else to gain a sense of safety comes seeking validation externally, right? So thus, my overall sense of self is becoming shaped and molded by external influence, right? Because I'm looking outside of myself. Oh, is this okay? Oh, is that okay? Oh, how do you feel if I do it this way? Like all that kind of stuff. And that shapes someone's self in a very specific way externally, right? So kind of like looking out for that is what's important here. Again, because individuation is the process of ridding the self of all falsities, all the layers of falsities that have been carried from external influences, and gaining a clearer sense of self that is separate from, parents, siblings, family, friends, teachers, all that stuff. So it's very interesting to be here at this point because, again, going back to the whole matter of collapse, right? One of the most interesting things that I've seen is like relationship collapse, right? And like specifically like looking at it like friends. Like it's very interesting how like I've let go of people in my life, because when I realized that the foundation was, just based on bullshit, as I'd call it, things just fall apart. When there is no actual authenticity, there's no sustainability. And this is why it's really important to understand this specifically for the individual. If the individual is not being authentic, is not living within its own frame of authenticity, there will be collapse at some point. It will wake up and it will realize like, oh wow, I'm not doing this for the right reason. Or I'm not doing this for any reason at all. And when those awakenings when those awakenings happen, or that awakening happens, it changes the dynamics of everything. So this is why it's very important to understand. Like, and there are things that are like, why do you do the things that you do? Why do you cut your hair the way that you do? Why do you wear the clothes that you do? Why do you, like all that kind of stuff? And you ask people, or more importantly, you ask yourself, why do you drive the car that you do? Why do you ride the bike? Why do you do what you do, right? And when it comes down to it, because, the far majority of us belong to a society and a culture, or multiple cultures, depending, right? And those societies and cultures have an influence on us, right? Because we have this kind of, like, crave for belonging, right? Belonging to something. We're going to kind of, like, to an extent, whether it's small or big, we're going to sacrifice self, right? So say, for instance, if you're going to try to belong to something, and what you're going to try to belong to requires you to let go of your, enthusiasm, right? Now, enthusiasm is never something I would let go of. It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter what it is that I'm trying to belong to, what it is that's trying to get me to, no. nothing. I would never do that. But like, yeah, so that in and of itself, right? Um, when you look at that, it's like, okay, what is it about yourself that you are potentially needing to let go of? And then going from there. Um, I would put this in the spotlight that there is nothing out there that anybody should ever sacrifice or let go of part of themselves for, simply because they want a sense of belonging. And the reason I say this is because I think it was Robin Williams that said this, and that was it was a quote about loneliness. It was a quote about feeling alone. Yeah. He said, don't be scared. Yeah. He said, don't be scared of being alone. He said, be scared of being around people that make you feel alone, right? And I just think that that's a really great quote, and I think it's a really great thing to push forward into this, because I know that, myself included, a lot of people out there spend their time around people that make them feel alone, that are not good for them. But again, of course, this also comes down to how people were raised, right? If you're raised in an environment of chaos where you feel like you need to tune into everyone else's energy to feel a sense of safety, and then of course enmeshment is born because you feel like you can't be okay unless that other person's okay, and that other person is never okay, so it's now your job to be the rescuer to fucking make that person okay, right? That forms your relationships into the rescuer. So you end up moving forward in life being the rescuer. And that's not authentic. Because then what you're coming from a place of is an inability to be okay with other people's emotional states, right? Nothing wrong with someone else being sad. Nothing wrong with someone else being angry, right? But you learned that. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because a lot of people aren't okay with themselves because they learned that they can't be okay with themselves if other people are not okay with themselves. So then therefore they become the fixer, and that's inauthentic because it's not their place to do that. Unless, of course, you decide to pursue the route of, the mental health field and, be a mental health professional, right? But all in all, like, it's a very interesting thing how overly involved we are in each other's lives. One of the most interesting things that I look at, and I'm actually probably going to end up making this be one of the 31 days. I've been very fascinated by this observation of how kind of like obsessed we are with some people's lives. When I say some people's, I mean specifically like looking at celebrities, right? We kind of look at them as if they're gods, right? And as if they have no capacity for human error, when they do all the time. And we put them up on a pedestal and stuff, and like this, that, and the other. And when we find out that they've done something fucking terrible, we want nothing to do with them. Well, they're just like you and I. Again, they're prone to human error. They're likely going to fuck up in some way or another. And any disappointment regarding any of that is like, come on. Like, for instance, here's a good example. I'm not saying that this was right. It's just that when Chris Rock slapped, when Will Smith slapped Chris Rock on stage live, obviously society reacted and everything. And they were like, oh man, like I saw right through it. I'm pretty sure I knew exactly what happened and why it happened. But I don't now look at Will Smith and be like, that guy's a fucking piece of. No, I don't. I love his work. I think he's a cool guy. I've watched many of his movies and everything. But and the reason why it's so important to dive into this, especially for what I'm doing here, is because that is society. That is culture. Oh, what do you think about that? And when I say that, I refer to like the incident between Will Smith and Chris Rock. What do you think about that? Depending on where you derive your overall sense of self, if it is external and somebody is asking you that, you're going to sacrifice self in order to come up with some response, right? Maybe you're looking for their validation, right? Their validation and approval. So you're going to be like, oh yeah, fuck that guy. Like, no, like, it's ridiculous. This is why forming self for the self is so essential, because I'm gonna let everyone in on a little bit of a. I mean, it's not even a secret. I mean, I feel like it should be obvious at this point. Anytime that you sacrifice the self, it is felt energetically. It is sensed, And anytime that you do that, you are not more respected. You are less respected. People don't like when the self is sacrificed because it's a very authentic thing. It's a very genuine thing. And when it is sacrificed, it tells people that there is no foundation there, that you don't fucking know yourself, that you don't fucking see yourself. So, people, maybe just to like mess with you, they're gonna be like, oh, good job, but like deep down, they're like, wow, this person has no fucking feet to stand on. Holy fucking shit, they don't even know themselves. And it's just it's crazy. So I'm really curious, ask the self how much of the overall sense of self is derived from external influence, right? Because again, if you grew up in an environment where you had to tune into everyone else's energy to feel a sense of safety because you learned that you had to be the rescuer and everything, that'll really mess you up. But then once you learn to, of course, as we're doing here, individuate, right, you're going to separate yourself from other people's problems. You're going to be like, okay, wait, never mind, that's that person's shit, that's that person's shit, that's that person's shit, that's that person's shit, that person's shit. And then you start putting up the boundaries, right? And you recognize the frame of authenticity, the frame of the self. You start taking your energy back on you, and that changes the dynamics of everything. And by the way, when you do that, and I have been doing that, it's fucking wild. When you do that, everyone that you were previously tuning your energy into is going to come back to you, and they're going to be like, what the fuck? And, it's just the way that it is. You don't feel like tuning your energy into everyone else to feel a sense of safety because you know that that's not safety. You know that that was just a defense mechanism growing up in your childhood because, you were in social survival and you were looking for love, safety, and belonging, and you were also looking for external validation, but because you were in an unsafe, unpredictable, and chaotic environment, none of that was available, so you compensated.